Hey guys, it's Jim, and you're watching Talking Vintage Vendor Corner. This is show number 25, brought to you by Decades Acclaimed Vintage Depot, located at 502 West Brennan Road, Lakeland, Florida, 33813. Welcome to the show. If you haven't seen this before, this is a show for booth owners or vendors in a mall like Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot. We talk about trending topics in our industry, and hopefully we give you guys a little insight that you can take back with you if you're a booth owner or a shop owner in a mall like Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot. All right, we're going to do topics from the bag. We've been doing this the past couple of times. I have a little bag, and we had topics submitted by our vendors here at Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot, and we are going to blindly discuss these topics. All right, first up we have breakage. Hey, there's a good topic for you. Whose responsibility is breakage? Well, here at Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot, it states in our contract that Decades itself is not responsible for any lost, broken, or stolen items. Normally, if a customer breaks it and they offer to pay for it, we try to reach out to the vendor real quick and see if they want to accept the payment. But most of the time, the vendors just chalk it up as the cost of doing business, and they don't accept payment for the item. Now, if it's a vendor breaking another vendor's item, then we assume that the vendor will pay for the broken item so that the other vendor doesn't lose out. But most of the time, it happens in moving, when somebody's shifting booths around or whatever, and we might break a few things, but they understand that they're getting help to move the items, to change their booth around, and they usually don't ask for payment. So breakage, yeah, whose responsibility is that? I don't know how other shops handle it, but here at Decades Reclaimed, the shop itself is not responsible for it. But there are times where the shop, if a customer breaks the item, the shop won't ask the customer to pay for it, but the shop will go ahead and take care of it itself so that the vendor gets paid. So, different ways that we do it, I guess. Okay, next up we have vendor interactions. Vendor interactions. I'm not sure what they're asking here. I guess vendor interacting with customers or with other vendors. We just hope that everybody treats everybody the way they would like to be treated. We do have a few vendors that, let's say, are excited to be here, and they talk to the customers quite a bit. We've had to warn a couple of the vendors that they're almost on the borderline of stalking. When you say Wendy's stalking, Wendy's here. She's setting up for Christmas. Yeah. So we just ask them to to calm it down a little bit. Just make sure the customer is being taken care of, but don't try to monopolize their time. I guess that's what they're asking when they're asking that vendor interactions. We get along real well here as vendor to vendor, so it would have to be with the customer. So. And the customer's always right, so as part of the management team, we just kind of have to take what happens. There you go. Okay, I think I only have one left in the bag. I'll have to ask Wendy for another topic, because unless this is a big topic, I don't know how long I can go on this. Oh, okay, here's a big one. How do you know what is trending? Well, we do another show here at Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot. It's called Talking Vintage, and it goes out on Facebook, and it's basically for our local audience, and we talk about what's trending there every week, and that's what's trending here at Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot. And how we can tell that is we just see the items that are coming to the counter. We can look at item summary reports, for past dates and stuff like that to see what is selling. So mainly it's what comes up to the counter, and that's how we tell what's trending. Now, telling what's trending as an industry, you just have to go on the web and check it out and see what other people are saying. What's trending here at Decades may not trend in another shop, and what's trending in another shop, again, it's not going to trend here at Decades, maybe. So you just have to look around. But when we talk about what's trending, we're talking about what's trending here, and we use physical reports that we can look at and see what's trending. Well, there you go. I've got 3 topics. Wendy, give me another topic. I need another topic so I can round out the show. She's over here just like cringing. She doesn't know. She doesn't know. Hey, let's talk about pricing a little bit. We probably talked about this before, but this has come up quite a bit. When you're pricing an item as a vendor, you have to price to sell. You can't price the item to make money. Does that make sense? You know, you can't, if you made a bad purchasing decision and you paid too much for an item, you can't price it to get your money back. You just have to take your loss and move on. It happens all the time. When items that have been sitting in here for months and years or whatever, you just got to get rid of them. You got to make room for the next item that can come in. You got to give the new items a chance to sell. So therefore, you have to price to sell. And when it comes to it, you may just lose money. You know, hopefully you don't do that a lot, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you just got to take a loss and move on. Just remember that if you're selling an item, you are getting something back, and that's something that you get back and be used to purchase the next item, and hopefully you'll do better on. But we get a lot of vendors that get stuck in the cycle of they've paid too much for the item and they expect to pass that on to the customer and still make a profit. But you can't. Customers are savvy. They know what something is worth. They're not going to overpay for an item in the most part. Right, Wendy? I guess in the most part, they're not going to overpay for an item. So where you think it might be worth, you know, X amount of dollars, let's just say $30, and they don't think it's worth $30, they're not going to pay it. So maybe you paid $25 for it and you really got to make money, so you mark it at $30. They're just not going to pay it. You got to do your research. You have to be smart about buying. I use a 30% rule where I'm going to purchase an item for 30% of what I think it's going to sell for. And everybody's like, oh, that's crazy, Jim. How can you do that? There's no way. Well, you have to, because here's how I look at it. If I buy an item for $90, if I buy an item for $30 that I can sell for $90, I'm going to make $30. Okay, because it's going to take me $30 to sell the item in the way of rent and time and stuff like that, you know, cleaning it, tagging it, all that kind of stuff. That takes time and takes money. So that's how I deal with things. So when people come in and they want to sell me items, first of all, I tell them selling to a reseller is not your best bet. Selling it individually to somebody else is your best bet. Become a reseller yourself and sell the item. But if you're going to sell to me, I work in 30%. So I'm going to give you 30% for the item. Hopefully, I'm going to make 30% at the end. And they're like, well, that's really low, just 30%. It's worth $90. You're only going to give me 30. You're going to make 60. I'm like, no, I'm not going to make 60. You're going to get your 30 today. Hopefully, I'm going to make 30 at the end of the time frame it takes to sell the item. And it may take, 6 months. So I'm out $30 for 6 months. And it costs me time. I have to pay rent just like all the vendors do here at the shop. And so, that rent equates to each item that I have in my booth. I had the cost of tags, the cost of cleaning, the cost of keeping up with it, the cost of moving it around. All those things go into it. So at the end of the day, I feel it's fair to pay 30%. Now, I will go up on some items that I think are going to sell right away, because I can see that cost of selling the item, 30% shrinking. So if I get an item that I think is going to sell rapidly, I might go 50%. I give them 50% if they're bringing it in to sell it to me. And then hopefully I'm going to make 50% because the item's going to sell right away. And that cost of 30%, let's go back to that real quick. That cost of 30% is not only your tags, your time and everything, it's the percentage that the shop takes from you as well. So you have to take that in consideration. Here at Decades Reclaim, we're at 12%. So 12% of the item. So again, that $90 item is going to sell for 12%. That's going to be $9, almost $10. So you got to put that onto it. So an item that I sell for 90, I paid 30, I'm going to lose 10 right away to the percentage, and then the rest, what's left of that 30 is 20% that's left is cost of doing business or whatever. So just take that in consideration. Make sure that you're pricing to sell, that you're not pricing to make money. It sounds wrong, but that's what it is. You got to price to sell. You have to purchase well to sell well. So there you go, guys. That's it for the show. I'm Jim, your host. You've been watching Talking Vintage Vendor Corner, brought to you by Decades Reclaim Vintage Depot, located at 502 West Brennan Road, Lakeland, Florida, 33813. If you're ever in Central Florida, come in and see us and say, hey, I saw you on your show, Talking Vintage Vendor Corner, and I just thought I would step in. It would be great to have one of our fans come in or one of our followers come into the shop. Once again, thanks to everybody for watching. You've been watching Vendor Corner, brought to you by Decades Reclaim. Have a great evening.